If you've ever used linear regression to predict a trend, you've used the two normal equations. They are the foundation of linear prediction, from calculating planetary orbits to training modern AI models.
But why are they called normal? Are there abnormal equations? Or is it because they use the normal distribution?
It's actually neither. To find out why, we have to look at how they were first used. In 1700, Isaac Newton was trying to predict the motion of the equinoxes. He had a bunch of imperfect, conflicting observations. To find the best fit, Newton used a simple but powerful rule. He adjusted his line so that the positive errors and negative errors perfectly canceled each other out. That means the sum of all errors was exactly 0.
In modern algebra, this expands to the sum of the outputs equals n times the intercept, plus the slope times the sum of the inputs. This is exactly the first of the two normal equations. Newton intuitively used it to eliminate bias, but he didn't have a second equation, so he couldn't solve for both variables uniquely without making other assumptions.
In 1805, French mathematician Adrien-Marie Legendre published the method of least squares. He proposed finding the best line by minimizing the sum of the squared errors. Squaring them made all errors positive and penalized large deviations heavily.
This seems super logical. So did Legendre invent linear regression?
4 years later, Carl Friedrich Gauss published his own work. He claimed he'd been using the exact same least squares method since 1795, when he was only 18. He used it to predict the orbit of the dwarf planet Ceres, which had been lost behind the sun. While other astronomers searched the wrong parts of the sky, Gauss predicted its location perfectly.
A huge math feud broke out.
Legendre was furious, but Gauss did something different from Legendre's approach. Legendre approached the problem purely using algebra, calculus, and optimization. Gauss provided a probabilistic proof showing why minimizing the sum of squares is the best way to estimate the unknown parameters.
To make his derivation easier to follow, we will walk through a simplified version of Gauss's proof. While Gauss actually solved the general case for orbital elements with multiple variables, he started his derivation with a simpler problem, measuring a single physical quantity, u, with independent errors. Each measurement, y sub I, equals u plus an error, e sub I. These errors follow some unknown probability density function, f of e.
The joint probability, or likelihood, of obtaining the entire set of observations is the product of their individual probabilities. Gauss wanted to maximize this likelihood to find the most probable value of u.
To make the calculation much easier, Gauss took the natural logarithm of the likelihood. This converted the product of probabilities into a sum of logarithms.
To find the value of u that maximized the log likelihood, he took the derivative with respect to u and set it to 0. Using the chain rule, the derivative of the inside term, y sub I minus u, gives a factor of -1.
Dividing by -1, he simplified the sum. Then he defined a helper function, g of e, as the ratio of the derivative, f prime of e, to f of e. The optimization condition reduced to a clean equation. The sum of g evaluated at each error is 0.
Here is Gauss's core assumption. He postulated that for a single measured quantity, the most probable value must be the arithmetic mean of the observations.
That might seem completely obvious, since everyone uses the average. But Gauss used that obvious assumption to force a mathematical constraint. If u is the arithmetic mean, then the sum of the errors is exactly 0. So whenever the sum of the errors is 0, the sum of g of the errors must also be 0. To see why this constraint forces g to be linear, imagine just two errors. If they sum to 0, one is the negative of the other, forcing g of e to be an odd function. With 3 or more errors, any small shift in one error must be balanced by the others. For the sum of g of the errors to always remain 0 under these shifts, the rate of change of g, its derivative, must be constant everywhere. A function with a constant rate of change that passes through the origin is simply a straight line. G of e equals k times e. The only function g that satisfies this for any set of errors is a linear function.
So g of E must be directly proportional to E, meaning g of E equals some constant k times E. This implies a simple linear relationship.
Substituting g of E back into the definition, Gauss got a simple differential equation, f prime of E over f of E equals k times E. Integrating both sides, the natural log of f of E equals 1/2 k times E squared plus a constant. Exponentiating both sides gives f of E equals a constant times e to the power of 1/2 k times E squared, where the base E here is Euler's constant, not to be confused with the error variable E. Since the total probability must integrate to 1, k must be negative. Letting k equal -1 over sigma squared, he obtained the normal or Gaussian distribution. Gauss proved that if you believe the average is the most probable value, you must believe that errors are normally distributed. Now, Gauss could solve the linear regression problem. The errors are y sub I minus a minus b times x sub I. The likelihood of the parameters a and b is the product of their normal probabilities. To maximize this likelihood, Gauss wanted to make the negative exponent as small as possible. This meant he had to minimize the sum of the squared errors. Thus, maximizing the probability literally means minimizing the sum of squares. Gauss proved that least squares is not just an arbitrary criterion, it is the mathematically optimal choice under a normal error distribution. To minimize this sum of squares, he took the partial derivative with respect to a and set it to 0. Dividing by -2 simplified the equation. He then distributed the summation across the terms. Since summing the constant a, n times, is simply n times a, and the constant slope b can be pulled out, the equation simplifies. Finally, moving the parameters to the right side yields the first normal equation. Next, he did the same by taking the partial derivative with respect to b and setting it to 0. Dividing by -2 again simplifies the expression. Distributing the variable x sub I into the terms and applying the summation gives 3 distinct sums. Pulling the constant parameters a and b out of the sums simplifies the terms. Rearranging the equation yields our second normal equation. The sum of x sub I y sub I equals a times the sum of x sub I plus b times the sum of x sub I squared. To solve these normal equations efficiently, we write them together as a system. First, the equation for parameter a. Second, the equation for parameter b. Next, we extract the coefficients of our unknowns, a and b, into a symmetric 2x2 matrix multiplying the parameter vector, resulting in our observation sums on the right. This system can be factored elegantly. We define the design matrix A with a column of 1s for intercept A and a column of x values for slope B. The vector x represents our parameters, and L holds our observed y values. Multiplying A transpose by A yields the coefficient matrix, and A transpose L yields the observation vector. This matches our matrix system, as A transpose A x equals A transpose L. And here is the most beautiful part. If we expand the dimensions of these matrices, adding more unknown parameters to the vector x and corresponding predictor columns to the design matrix A, this exact same matrix equation, A transpose AX equals A transpose L, represents Gauss's general normal equations for any number of variables. The algebraic structure remains perfectly unchanged. Why Gauss called them normal? Geometrically, the fact that the residual, or error, vector is perpendicular, or orthogonal, to the column spatial A, the predictor subspace, is the fundamental intuition behind the least squares method. We can see this clearly by working directly with the matrix equations. First, let's establish our key vectors from the matrix equation, the actual data vector L, the predicted data vector projection L hat equals AX, and the error vector E equals L minus L hat. The predictor subspace is the column space of A. This subspace contains every possible linear combination of the columns of A. Therefore, any vector in this subspace can be written in the form AW for some vector W.
For the error vector E to be perpendicular to the predictor subspace, call of A, it must be perpendicular to every single column of A. In matrix algebra, two vectors are perpendicular if their dot product is 0. For a matrix A and a vector E, this means A transpose E equals 0.
Let's substitute our definition of the error vector E equals L minus AX into this dot product expression. Now distribute A transpose across the terms. According to the normal equations, we know that A transpose AX equals A transpose L. If we substitute A transpose L in place of A transpose AX, we get A transpose L minus A transpose L, which equals 0.
Because A transpose E is exactly 0, the error vector E is strictly orthogonal to the rows of A transpose, which are exactly the columns of A.
Think of the columns of A as spanning a two-dimensional tabletop, our predictor subspace, embedded in a three-dimensional room.
The true observation vector L is a point hovering somewhere above or below the table because our linear model isn't a perfect fit. The least square solution finds a point on the table, L hat, that is as close to L as possible.
The shortest distance from a point L to a plane is always a straight line dropped at a perfect 90-degree angle. That line is our error vector E.
If you want to see this on a granular level using the equations from our video, look at the partial derivatives that were set to 0.
From the derivative with respect to A, the sum of the errors is 0. This means the error vector is perpendicular to the vector of 1s, the first column of A. From the derivative with respect to B, the sum of x sub I times e sub I is 0. This means the error vector is perpendicular to the x vector, the second column of A.
By forcing the derivative to 0 to find the minimum error, calculus automatically forces the error vector to be completely perpendicular to your predictor variables.
But is this result dependent on the assumption that errors follow a normal distribution?
The short answer is no. The elegant structure of these normal equations, both in scalar and matrix forms, holds true regardless of the error distribution.
To prove this, in 1823, Gauss published a second, more robust proof, the Gauss-Markov theorem, which bypassed the normal distribution assumption entirely. He proved that least squares is the best linear unbiased estimator, or BLEU, based only on the assumption that errors have a mean of 0, constant variance, and are uncorrelated. This is an elegant result, where geometry, probability, and optimality all lead to the exact same system of equations.
If you want to master the proofs behind the math we use every day, like and subscribe to Matilda Academy. See you next time!